Hello. Uh, Welcome to World Cancer Week 2022. World Cancer Week is conducted by CancerX Incorporated. And this event, including 30 sessions, and invited more than 100 speakers. And today, this session will be the CancerX R&D. The subtitle is How We Can Accelerate the Approval of Cancer Treatments. Before start the sessions, my name is Yuta Mishima, and co-founder and director of CancerX, and I'm working as a researcher in academia and doing the research for the new type of immunotherapy using the iPS technology. I will first invite my representative, co-representative director of CancerX, Ueno Naoto. He will explain what is a CancerX.
Great.
Naoto.
So thank you very much. And then I'm going to share my slides. And welcome to the World Cancer Week 2022. And this session is about CancerX R&D. So CancerX was founded about 4 years ago, and it has 3 X, and X for crossing ideas for collaboration, and X for making changes, and X to cross out. We value all 3 X, and we want to really bring changes to the society that everybody could live it, everybody with cancer could live with the fullest extent. So as Yuta has mentioned that 2019, 2020, we had probably one of the largest summit in Tokyo. And since the pandemic, we have moved to virtual, and we have the largest platform for idea exchange. So that was 2021, and at that time we had more than 30 sessions with 150 participants. So this year, 2022, World Cancer Week, the theme is about exchanging ideas and sharing views. And we have excited participants, and we like to see a variety of opinions that would reflect new ideas. We'll hope that bring you new directions. So as you know that yesterday in Japan, or yesterday in Asia, it was the World Cancer Day. In the United States, actually, we're still February the 4th. This is actually hosted by the UICC. UICC is Union of International Cancer Control, and they focus on global cancer control. CancerX is a official proud member of the UICC. UICC is now focusing of trying to focus on closing the care gap. This is a new theme that will be starting from 2022 for 3 years. And then, as it says, everyone deserves access to cancer care. So what does this mean? Well, it means that it's not just about just actually treatment, but prevention, treatment, diagnosis, information, and including drug development. So many aspects has different type of gaps that exist, and we think it's important to know these gaps. UICC has 3 levels of planning. 2022 is realizing the problem. So it's really about the awareness of the gap. 2023 is uniting our voices and taking actions. And 2024, together, we'd like to challenge those in power. So meaning that we really want to bring change to the society. So I hope that this explains where CancerX stands and our relationship with UICC. We have fantastic panelists for these sessions. So I hope that you could learn something, and we hope to hear from you all together, and we could make a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Naoto, for introduction of CancerX. Could you, all speakers, could you on your video? Again, thank you for coming today. As we are CancerX, very honored to invite you all here today. I would like to introduce three speakers here. This first speaker is Dr. Stefan Han. Thank you for coming today. He was the U.S. Food and he was the commissioner of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration between 2019 to 21, and currently working on as a working on as a CEO partner of Flagship Pioneering and Chief Executive Officer of Harbinger Health.
Thank you very much. Yuta, should I go ahead?
No. Oh, thank you. I will explain the next speakers. So second speaker is Dr. Yanagihara, is a reviewer at the PMDA. This is a counterpart of the FDA in Japan, and it stands for the Japanese Regulatory Agency, and it came from the office. Comes from the Office of 5, that is responsible for the review of oncology drugs. So in addition to Mr. Han's talk, we will be able to hear the valuable stories and the communication between the US and the Japanese review agencies. Thank you for coming, Dr. Yanagihara.
Thank you.
And the third person is Dr. Ohtsu, Atsushi Ohtsu, so Director of National Cancer Center East Hospital. And this hospital in Japan was one of the top cancer hospital with over 9,000 new patients a year. And we'll talk about why it takes so long to create new cancer drugs. And also he has a lot of experience to doing the conduct clinical trial. So that's why I want to ask you the current challenge and the problem in Japan about clinical trial.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction.
Thank you. So let's move to, before start the session, if you, for the Japanese speaker, if you want to hear the Japanese, yeah, you can. We provide Japanese interpretation by the Zoom functions, so you can choose the languages if you like. So let me start session from the Dr. Han. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Mishima. Thank you, Dr. Ueno and others. It's really an honor to be here at the CancerX symposium, but also at this R&D session. Nothing is more important than the subject that we're going to discuss today, which is about accelerating treatments for diseases and important diseases like cancer. So as you heard, I was the 24th Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration in the United States during the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And so I served from December of 2019 through January of 2020. And during that time, of course, we saw it was a period of great urgency and medical emergency related to COVID-19. My background is as a cancer doctor and a cancer researcher, and I previously taken care of lung cancer and sarcoma patients, but also served as the chief medical executive at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. So, I've been asked to give you a very brief intro about what happened at the Food and Drug Administration during the COVID pandemic, and I'm sure we're going to hear the same from Dr. Yanagihara. It was an interesting time for all of us in the regulatory agencies. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration regulates 20% of our gross domestic product. It's food, but also medical products. And as you can imagine, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was all about getting medical products into the hands of providers and patients very rapidly. personal protective equipment, diagnostic tests, treatments, and vaccines, of course. And we learned something very valuable from COVID-19, although none of us would have wished to ever go through this again. What we learned is that we do have the capacity, if we come together, to accelerate medical products and get them into the hands of providers and patients. And let me just talk to you a little bit about that. So to me, there have been two major lessons from COVID-19. One is that we have the importance of the private sector. That is, what drives innovation in much of the developed world is a robust private sector that takes risks with money and puts in place various medical products and innovations that can then be put in the hands of providers, doctors, and to patients. The other thing that we learned, and I was so glad to hear that this is a focus of both the UICC, but also CancerX, is that the most vulnerable among us are the ones who are most disadvantaged during the pandemic. And we must make sure that all the innovations we put forward are in their hands, as well as those who can afford it otherwise. So what did we learn from the COVID pandemic? Well, at the FDA, we had a doubling of our workload. So besides approving drugs for hypertension, diabetes, and cancer, we were also faced with an influx of requests to authorize products on an emergency basis for COVID-19. And early on in the pandemic, we made a commitment at the agency to do everything we could to remove regulatory barriers. So one message I'd like to leave with you is that, in fact, regulatory agencies, which are responsible for making sure that products are safe and effective, and it's a very important responsibility, that we actually can move to expedite and can foster innovation. Now, we have to have appropriate oversight, but we can actually help innovators and developers move things quickly. So with vaccines, early on, we recognized that a vaccine was probably going to be the one way that's going to help us get out of the pandemic as quickly as possible. So we worked very closely with innovators, with developers of vaccines, and we decided that we were going to really, from the beginning, be very transparent about what the rules of the road were, what path had to be taken, what steps need to be taken, so that at the end result, people weren't questioning and coming back to us, does this need to be done? Does that need to be done? The other thing that we did was that we had ongoing communication. So typically at the Food and Drug Administration, a developer, an innovator will send an application in, we'll look at it, we'll spend some time and send it back to them. What we decided to do was have a conversation in real time. And one of the lessons we learned is that we can do this along every step of the way, and it cuts many months to years off the product development cycle if we're able to do that. So just put this in perspective. January 10th, 2020 was the first time that the COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus genome was public. In a short 11 months later, the US FDA authorized the Pfizer-BioNTech, that was on December 11th, 2020, vaccine. The shortest time that a vaccine had ever been approved by the US Food and Drug Administration was 4 years. And we were able to by bringing together the developers, by bringing together the government, by, of course, having government-sponsored and government taking at risk certain factors related to the development. But at the end of the day, the private sector stood up these studies very quickly and was able to get these studies performed. We were able to review them in real time. So what's our lesson for cancer? Our lesson is that cancer is equally as important as COVID-19. Cancer is a scourge. Cancer affects 40% of Americans. So 40% of American adults will likely have a diagnosis of cancer. And that number is probably true around the world, which means it's a staggering number of people who will develop cancer. And we really have to think about ways that we can accelerate the development of innovative products. So we at the agency, at the FDA, developed a roadmap, which we published, saying, what are the things that we can institutionalize to reduce the barriers? And one of them is communication and transparency. What are the rules of the road? What also needs to be done to help move these products forward? The other thing is we have something called the accelerated approval pathway in the United States, in the Food and Drug Administration. I'm going to be very interested to see if the Japanese regulatory agencies have a similar pathway. And what that allows us to do for unmet medical needs, it allows us to very quickly perform clinical trials with certain endpoints, with certain ways of looking at the cancer that allow us to expedite. So although we all want to look at, of course, how long someone lives with a certain treatment, there are certain endpoints that we can put in clinical trials that really relate to those important clinical endpoints and can allow us to make at least temporary approvals while we collect data. I'm going to make one final point that I think is key. We have what we're calling in the United States a slow pandemic of chronic disease, cancer being one of them. We need to shift the regulatory landscape, and we need to shift the thinking in the private sector to how can we intervene earlier in disease before disease gets advanced. So that's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of effort. And it's going to take capital be at risk. But I believe we have an effort to completely change the way cancer development and cancer therapies are developed if we think about the early intervention, early diagnosis. The actual technology is there to make early diagnosis, to identify cancer from the blood, for example. The more we're able to do that, the better we're going to be able to intervene and affect the natural history of the disease. What we need is very innovative ways to approach it from a regulatory point of view. And I look forward to having that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Han. Very valuable to big lessons from your experience under COVID-19 as a commissioner in the FDA. So we will ask you more detail later. But yes, and let's move to the second speaker. After I'll ask you all the speakers' introduction and move to the discussion. So second speaker is Reiko Yanagihara.
Hi, I'm Reiko Yanagihara. Thank you very much for a kind introduction, Yuta-san. And I'm from PMDA, and I'm Review Director of Office of New Drug 5. And let me share the...
Yeah, after the Dr. Han's talk, so maybe many Japanese people are interested in the, okay, then what is the regulatory agency of in Japan? Also what we have the approval, accelerated approval system, and maybe the Yanagihara will introduce you our system. So please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So this is the introduction slide for Pharmaceutical and Medical Devices Agency, you may know. And PMDA was established in April 2004 as an independent administrative regulatory agency. We work together with Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare to deliver pharmaceuticals and medical devices promptly to the people. In the right section, you can see shows our PMDA's three major roles. That is a scientific review of the drug and medical devices and regenerative product, and safety measures and relief measures. And this is a slide of my self-introduction. And again, I'm a review director of Office of New Drug 5, which we work on the scientific review of review and consultation of the development of cancer drug. And my career at PMDA started as a quality reviewer of biopharmaceuticals. I belong to Office of Cellular and Tissue-Based Product, and I was involved in reviews and consultation of clinical development of biosimilar product also. And then moved to the Office of Standards and Guideline Development. And I was involved in projects across multiple offices in PMDA. And I will explain this project later in the following slide. And then after this project, I moved to the Office of In Vitro Diagnostics and serves on reviews and consultation on in vitro diagnostics, including NGS-based CDX, companion diagnostics, and oncology panel. So in recent years, I was involved in the oncology field from the diagnostic point of view and also from the drug side. And this slide, in this slide, let me explain about the project across multiple offices in PMDA. So based on the accumulation of review experiences and the product using a state-of-the-art technology and the need to communicate with global agency or the global development of the drug, it is considered that the promotion of collaboration and cooperative relationships across multiple offices in PMDA is necessary. So this project was established in 2011, and which serves a platform where the reviewers and inspectors from various offices work together to promote the drug and medical devices development and accelerate review process. And this is the image of the project across multiple offices. And this slide shows one of the working group, how the working group works. And so the many members from Office of New Drug, Office of Medical Device, and Office of Safety and other related offices get together to discuss the regulatory issues. And the members are considered depending on the project. And the scope of this project is to develop the guidance on review policy. And during the development, we have a discussion with industry and academia and other stakeholders, including MHLW. And so in this working group serves as a platform to collaborate with international regulatory agency. And let me move to the regulatory framework for new drug development in Japan. And this slide shows the overview of the new drug approval system in Japan. And standard review period is, as you see here, on the 12 months. And we have several accelerated approval system. And first one is priority review, and in which we review the application in 9 months. And this is designated for severe diseases and also for the drug, which significantly improve the medical care. And then when the drug is designated as orphan disease product, and it is under the priority review, and the review period is 9 months. And the condition to be designated is shown here. The number of patients is less than 50,000. And also the product should show the possibility of the development, which means which shows the substantial efficacy and safety for the diseases. And the next one, the Sakigake, that is unique Japanese accelerated approval system. And I will explain the system in the next slide. And for the Sakigake designated product, the review period is only 6 months, the half of the standard review. And if it is designated as Sakigake, we support the development through the priority consultation on the development. And also we do the prior assessment before marketing authorization application. And these processes are supported by Conselju, so to efficiently move to the next stage. And the last one is conditionally early approval system. And the review period is 9 months. And so that this is designated when the confirmatory clinical trial are not feasible or take long time. And this slide shows how the Sakigake designation system works. And the objective of this system is to bring innovative medical products to early practical application in Japan sooner than other countries with various supports. And designation criteria is shown here. That there are 3 criteria. And innovative, and that should be innovative in medicines or medical devices or regenerative medicines originated from Japan and firstly developed and planned for regulatory submission in Japan. And concurrent submission to the other foreign agency is allowed. And also the last one is the product is expected significant efficacy for the target disease, such as much improvement from existing treatment, considering non-clinical data and early phase clinical data. And both Sakigake and conditional early approval system are legislated in December 2019 to ensure that the system, ensure the system's stability and sustainability. And so about the oncology product, the Sakigake, up to now, the 21 pharmaceutical products have been designated. And among these 21 products, 6 products are anti-cancer drugs. And already 5 products are approved as of January 12th, 2022. And as for the conditional early approval designation, 4 products are already approved under this system. And so based on this effort, our review time is decreasing, and now one of the fastest review agency in the world. Thank you. That's all of my talk.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thought and minute detail about Japanese accelerated approval, also the regular approval process. So what for me it's very interesting is the last slide you shared with us, and the duration of the approval time. And because in Japan usually we are always talking about the drug lag. Maybe we will ask the speakers about this problem, but maybe, as you indicated, the duration of the approval process is very short now. So the problem is entry of the submission of the clinical trial data, also the IND, so-called, right? NDA, sorry. NDA. So that's because maybe, yeah, we will talk about this problem later. Thank you. And let's move to the third speakers, Dr. Ohtsu. Could you start? And he also share us the general problem about drug drug R&D process of the cancer drug in terms of including the cancer drug. So please start. Sorry, it's mic is off. Your mic is off.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Yuta. So I'm Atsushi. I'm specializing in medical oncologist and now working as director of National Cancer Center East, and also acting as a program officer of a new cancer drug development in the AMED, which is a government grant funding agency in Japan. Okay, so let me start my talk with, I'm sorry, this is the second. Okay, so let me start my talk for oncology drug development status in Japan briefly. So this is a roadmap of drug development. As you see in this slide, so usually it takes a long time, around 20 years from drug discovery to the regulatory approval with medical reimbursement. So in this process, there have been several critical issues. And the first one is a very low success rate, less than 1 in 10,000. And the second one is the immature infrastructure of the surrounding the preclinical to early clinical trial, so-called death barrier in Japan. So under the recent COVID-19 pandemic, so messenger RNA vaccine have been rapidly developed globally with an amazing speed. So when we see these status, so in my personal opinion, so several critical issues are shown here might cause remarkable delay in Japan. So you may know that in case of the BioNTech, so mRNA vaccine was originally challenged for cancer treatment. And this technology was immediately adopted for COVID-19 in collaboration with Pfizer pharmaceutical company. Then the vaccine was investigated in the March regional clinical trial, so-called MRCT global clinical trial. But unfortunately, Japan could not participate in the trial due to immature infrastructure for MRCT and the investigator-initiated trials. So another issue is differences in regulatory affairs, which was mentioned in Yanagihara-san's talk. So I delete this point. And I would like to add the last issue that we could not access to the global data platform, including cutting-edge genome and multiomics data for the next new development. So approximately 15 years ago, so we had similar experience in oncology drug lab in Japan here, and then constructed infrastructure for the conducting and reading MRCT. So finally, most of the oncology drugs have been newly approved by the MRCT data in recent years. Also in our NCC East, so MRCT and the investigator-initiated trials are commonly done, and the number is increasing year by year, okay? So another important infrastructure is a screening platform with the genome and the multiomics data. So we have established the large-scale platform in collaboration with nationwide hospitals and the major pharmaceutical companies for new oncology drug development named Scrum Japan. So more than 30,000 patients have already been approved for the enrollment to any of the genotype match trial. Based on the data platform, we have discovered a new driver gene and found an effective agent with our basic research, which was published in Nature last year. And as shown in this slide, so the patient achieved a dramatic response with this agent. And this is actually the first patient who received a great benefit in the world. Now we are expanding the platform worldwide, including participation to international genome consortium named ICGC and global multiomics data platform as a core member. Of course, there are several big hurdles such as differences in ethical, legal, and the regulatory affairs between the countries for integrating large-scale international omics data. Of course, these are the tough work, but we are challenging to establish the global cutting-edge data platform with latest AI technologies. And the data will be utilized new class agent development, including mRNA vaccine as a cancer treatment. I hope your understanding and support of this project for cancer patients, not only in Japan, but also in the world. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Dr. Ohtsu, thank you for your information, for sharing the very thoughtful and thoughtful ideas, also the general information about drug R&D process. And we would like to move to the panel type of discussions after three speakers' introductions. So first, for personally, I want to ask Dr. Han, so about more minute detail about your idea of what we can learn from the COVID-19 accelerated program, the accelerated approval process to the oncology side, because I heard you were the oncologist before the commissioners working at the MD Anderson Cancer Centers. So of course the target patients compare between the vaccine and the oncology fields is totally different, but I think there is something essence or something factors we can learn from the COVID-19 pandemic approval process to the oncology process.
Yes, thank you, Yuta. Appreciate it. I just want to make 2 points real quick. The ability to accelerate cancer drugs and innovation. We heard a couple things in the other speakers, and Dr. Ohtsu, I very much appreciated what you said about informatics and the informatics platform, because in fact, the analysis of data should allow us to accelerate innovation by identifying which targets are best for which therapies, and then better select patients for trials. So there's a component here of what the developers need to do, but there's also the interaction with the regulators. And of course, I think that's what you're asking me about. So, some of the most important lessons learned from COVID-19, I think Dr. Yanagihara mentioned that something called a priority consultation. This is essentially what we did during COVID-19, and there isn't any reason why that can't continue for all diseases, but most importantly, the ones like cancer that are a significant health problem across the world. So it's all about identifying upfront what are the steps that need to be taken to take place to get something from a concept into the hands of patients and doctors. And that means great transparency around the regulatory steps, but also what's going to be required to get from the preclinical to the clinical. So those conversations are really important on the regulatory side, but just as important is for the developers to be thinking very carefully about which populations they're going to need to study their drugs in or their therapies in. And that's going to take, I think, a very robust informatics approach, because at the end of the day, if you really want to accelerate it for, say, cancer, what you're going to want to use is a surrogate or intermediate endpoint, because you don't want to have to wait 10 years to find the result to a clinical trial. And the way that best to do that is, number one, analyze the data in a way that identifies those patients who are most likely to benefit from the therapy, and then associate that with either biomarkers or some clinical endpoint that allows you to get to an answer more quickly in a clinical trial. We have something in the US called the Oncology Center for Excellence, which has its own special programs for accelerating drug approval. And these are the sort of things that get done, the use of intermediate endpoints, the use of surrogate endpoints and biomarkers that allow for drugs to get into the hands of providers quickly. Now, the problem associated with this is that there will be revisions to this, right? Because you'll get real world experience and you'll have to come back and change the label and the indication. That's okay. But that's one of the best ways to accelerate innovation. And I think we learned that from COVID.
Thank you. Yeah, very nice ideas that. So I want to, after hearing that point, I dare to ask the Dr. Yanagihara, as your standpoint of the PMDA's Office of the New Drug 5, that is the review division for oncology. So if there's anything that you think is necessary for better harmonization with the FDA, or anything that you would like to ask Dr. Han as a former commissioner of the FDA?
Thank you, Yuta-san. Yes, we are now collaborating with other foreign regulatory agencies through Oncology Cluster, which is a teleconference take place every month, so that we can share the information and our review our thinking on each product under the confidential agreement, so that in that sense we can catch up the global development of the counter drug. And I think it is now we are in a good position to collaborate with foreign regulator, including FDA. And my question, we can ask freely about each product, the issues related to each product development, if we have a question. And so my question to Steve is, I heard the Oncology Office of an Oncology Center of Excellence was established a while ago under the National Cancer Moonshot Initiative, I think. And so I think it's, and after that OCE is established, they issued many guidelines on the anti-cancer drug development. And I think it's really greatly helped the sponsors to develop an innovative product. So what is the effort or to reorganize the agency to efficient review or the input to promote the drug development? So and also I heard when I was a quality reviewer, the FDA established the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality, which consists of reviewers and inspectors, and so that they can work together to ensure the quality. And I think it's really good system. And so what is their effort and challenge to reorganize the agency to promote the innovation?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Yanagihara. I really appreciate it. And I'll start by saying, when I was commissioner, I valued very much our relationship with PMDA and thought that there was incredibly great cooperation. And it's just an example when countries and regulatory agencies and peoples and governments actually cooperate, a lot can get done. And just one final point on that, one of the things we all could do, and I think is something for the future, is what we learned from COVID and the vaccines is that authorization occurred very quickly based on, good trials, but relatively limited number of people. And then we saw a product, the vaccines, mRNA vaccines, distributed around the world and given around the world to billions of people. Never before in the history of mankind have we had the development and delivery of a medical product in such a short period of time to so many people, which allowed us to gather data in the post-marketing setting in the real world, which really does help us inform about the safety and efficacy of products. And I think we could do that in the cancer sphere as well by sharing experiences around the post-marketing setting and how these drugs are applied and used in those settings in a real world circumstance. So I am a big proponent of the Oncology Center for Excellence. I think what that has done is it really has, and you probably know this from the PMDA, it allowed for multidisciplinary effect or multidisciplinary teams to come together around one subject, which is cancer, but across different centers. And that could involve companion diagnostics. So it would involve our in vitro diagnostic group, an NGS group. It could involve the inspections, et cetera. And so the point is, by bringing those people together, being transparent from the beginning about what's necessary, you actually can inform developers about what's needed and then accelerate the subsequent approval or authorization of a product. And then one final point about this, I think we need to live in a world like we live now, where decisions are made by regulatory bodies and they're going to be revised. They're going to be changed based upon post-marketing experience. And my challenge to industry is, it's very necessary to get on board with the post-marketing studies, because they'll allow us to accelerate. Without a commitment to do post-marketing studies and further assessment of what the drug's doing or any product is doing, we really won't be able to get to ultimately the best decision. And so it really has to go hand in hand, the developers and the regulators. And my shout out to the PMDA, your progress in terms of the ability to shorten the review times, incredibly well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. As a leader of a very famous hospital in Japan, also the medical doctor every day conducting the clinical trial. You mentioned about international clinical trial, also maybe the current program in Japan. So can I ask you some more detail about what do you think about the current program about conducting the more efficient clinical trial in terms of financial situation or education of the doctors, or what is the current program you think?
Thank you very much for your question. So I think that in case of the oncology drug development, so many institutions have matured infrastructure to conduct the MRCT, mainly led by the pharmaceutical company. So in case, I think that I don't think that there are no remarkable differences in regulation between PMDA and FDA based on the from the standpoint of the scientific view. So in case in our hospital, so we usually catch up. We always catch up the how FDA had considered the new agent approval process, and how does FDA change the idea of the guidance? So we always, every day, we have information from the FDA, not only FDA, but also EMA and of course, PMDA. So, whatever we want to submit the Japan as first, but most all of the pharmaceutical company, they would like to submit the new agent approval process to FDA rather than the PMDA. I'm sorry, that is just industry idea, not an academic idea. So we have to catch up such an approach. And of course, we need to have, we need to lead the global clinical trial as a core PI. So that is a very big point. Why? How can I lead the global drug development for the oncology? But in case of the for instance, in case of the gastric cancer, so which is a high prevalence in Japan, but not in United States. So in case of the, so one of the example is the recently approved agent, trastuzumab deruxtecan, which was originally developed in Daiichi Pharmaceutical, Daiichi Sankyo, in Japan. So we have collaborated with the this agent before clinical trials. We conducted the first-in-human study of this new antibody drug conjugate, so that then they expand the global clinical trials and approved in United States for breast cancer, and also, of course, at the same time in Japan. And in case of the gastric cancer, so we have published the phase 3 trial data in New England Medicine a few years ago. So that trial was done in an Asian trial, not in a global trial. But but the FDA was flexibly accepted our data. Okay, so for the gastric cancer indication, so Japan first, and the US FDA accepted the our Asian clinical trial data, and then approved. Okay, so I don't think there are so much differences, and we appreciate the, of course, the flexibility of the FDA. But I don't think that there are no remarkable differences in the scientific view between PMDA and FDA. So mainly, the drug. So when, and then we established the Scrum Japan. If you look at the data, so mainly focusing on the lung and GI cancer. So if you look at the data of the lung and GI cancer, there are no remarkable, less remarkable drug in this area. But in case of the hematological malignancies, they do not have the big data platform. So huge drug lag occurred. So that's why such an infrastructure data platform is so important. That is my opinion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ohtsu, for sharing your thoughts. Before move to the, because of the limitation of time, I have a lot of tons of questions to everybody. But yeah, before we move to the wrap up session, do you have any comments or question from Naoto?
Yeah, so Steve, I have more of a general question to you. So, you talked about transparency, and we all probably agree that transparency is very important. So I'm just curious about how, I absolutely agree that transparency is important, but what level of transparency are we talking about? And what is the difference of transparency that you learned during the COVID through the process that you're talking about? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I do.
I think all of us is going to agree with transparency, but what exactly is this about, actually? Yeah. And is there something that not just agency, but society-wise, that what do we have to demand to the agency, or what do we have to demand to the investigators?
You've said something very important. It's very easy to throw around a word like transparency, but what does it mean? So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So what we did at the agency during COVID is that we made it very clear, and this is what I mean by transparency. What were the steps that needed to take place to actually get authorization of the vaccines? So many companies in the US complain that the FDA is a black box, that there may be 10 steps, but nobody tells you there's 10 steps that you have to go through. And you go through 5, you submit your application and you find out that there's 5 more steps. And I'm exaggerating, of course. But one of the things that we made clear from the very beginning was that we said to people, innovators, these are the steps you need to go through. And I can tell you, most of the private sector doesn't care that there's 10 steps. They understand that we have our job to do and need to make sure something's safe and effective. They just want to know what those 10 steps are. The other thing is, what the Oncology Center of Excellence has done is not only be transparent about what's needed, but has engaged with developers about what are the endpoints of the clinical trial that are going to allow them to make these accelerated decisions. And that give and take and that transparency around that, as long as you come with good science and good data, that sort of exchange is very transparent. But we have another part of this that's really important. We have to protect confidential commercial information. Right. And so that's a line that we can't step over as a regulator, because that trust with industry, which allows them to take the risk and put money into it and develop, we need to be able to protect that. So it's a very fine line for the regulators, but I think in COVID, we showed that we could do it.
Yeah. I could understand that, because as an investigator, sometimes I work with pharma and helping them. But you're right. I think there's an impression that there PMDA and FDA both is a black box. And then we are very afraid of approaching. And if we say wrong stuff, we could get a wrong answer or wrong guidance, which will put us to more difficult position. And and this is something like we've been kind of should we say this to FDA or PMDA, and what's going to happen type of thing. And if we could get rid of that, I could see that we could go faster. I think that's what you're talking about, right, Steve?
It is, Naoto. It's absolutely right. And now being on the other side in the private sector, I get the question all the time. Should we talk to the FDA? We're worried if we say something and we say the wrong thing, they're going to get angry with us and it's going to take us forever. And I have to tell you, as a former insider, I always encourage people, talk early, talk often, show respect. And if you do that and you communicate early on and educate, you're probably going to end up on the right side of that question.
Got it. Great.
Thank you. Very nice questions. Thank you, Naoto, about transparency, because everybody want to know that point. Again, it's a very interesting talk and combination of the 2 regulatory body sides and the very famous director of the cancer hospital. And no doubt, I hope this session will help the better understanding of the drug approval process for the patient who is waiting for their treatment. Also, just last minute, can I ask Dr. Han about for the last comment for the your talk about this type of session, because this is also the one of our CancerX challenges in terms of the coordination, also the international coordination of the this session as well. So booking each speakers. So what do you think about this type of collective impact type of the session? So I will ask you the last comment from you.
Yuta, thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I found this very stimulating, and I think it's important. I love this session for the ability to have, excuse my language, but a transparent discussion around what are the issues that are facing us. And it's these dialogues that occur between industry, academia, and the regulators that absolutely have to take place if we're going to get, as you say, drugs into people who are waiting them and who are desperate because they're dying. So we really do, it's our responsibility to have these sort of discussions and to really open them up for people to hear.
Thank you for your comment. And again, thank you all the speakers here. We are really honored to invite you today here. Thank you. I will close this session. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.